You are listening to episode 6 on human trafficking and an interview with Sharon Rikard of Doors to Freedom.
Welcome to the Nurse Practitioner Show, brought to you by Accessible Healthcare Institute, empowering you with dynamic education and integrative healthcare. The Nurse Practitioner Show will share evidence-based practice strategies to implement translational research in the clinical setting with the goal of improving healthcare delivery and patient outcomes. Accessible Healthcare Institute strives to be an advocate for health promotion, disease prevention, improving public health, interprofessional collaboration, health policy efforts, and advanced nursing practice. Make sure to head on over to www.yourahi.org to subscribe to our newsletter and connect on social media. Let's join this episode of the Nurse Practitioner Show with your host, Dr. Rachel Silva, nurse practitioner.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Nurse Practitioner Show. January is Human Trafficking Month, so for this episode, I'm going to discuss human trafficking, followed by an interview with Sharon Rikard of Doors to Freedom. Doors to Freedom is an organization that helps to rescue survivors of sexual trafficking free of charge. And for those of you that are using our apps on Apple devices, from the Apple App Store, or on Android from the Google Play Store or Kindle Fire devices, from Amazon, you have access to some bonus material from this episode in the form of a PDF file, which has additional information and resources. Or you can go to our website at thenpshow.com. Let's get started. So what is human trafficking? Human trafficking is a form of modern slavery where people profit from the control and exploitation of others. It is a multi-billion-dollar form of international organized crime. And there are 3 types of human trafficking: forced labor, sexual slavery, and organ harvesting. According to the United Nations, 79% of human trafficking is sexual slavery and 18% is forced labor. And although we think of slavery as something from the past and gone away, unfortunately, it still exists today in even greater numbers than before in the United States and globally. Traffickers, what they do is they use force or fraud to control another person for the purpose of engaging in commercial sex or forcing them to provide labor services against their will. And this includes sales crews, large farms, sometimes fishing, restaurants, carnivals, and more. And the one thing that survivors of human trafficking all have in common is a loss of freedom. So how could this happen? What are the contributing risk factors to being victimized by human traffickers? This includes being abducted, being approached for a modeling job, or traveling abroad to another country for work or education, for improved living status, basically, or being sold by your parents or an intimate partner. Using the assistance of a smuggler, sometimes smugglers will persuade someone to go to another country for a better life. And then once they get into that country, the smuggler, who is also the trafficker, they have a debt to pay for the smuggling, and they essentially can not pay off this debt because of the high interest rates that the trafficker has on the debt. Other risk factors are poverty, unemployment, times of war, because one thing that happens is when they recruit children for child soldiers, natural disaster, and sporting events such as the Olympics, the World Cup, and the Super Bowl. There are trafficking cycle stages, and this begins with the pre-departure phase when the trafficker is actively recruiting, and then they travel to the destination and this is where they begin to be exploited, and when they realize that they were deceived, then they are received there, they are detained, and then this is where they are integrated into the industry or reintegrated. There are more than 114,000 organ transplants that are performed worldwide. And one of the largest ways of trafficking of organs is for kidneys, because kidneys, we have 2 kidneys, so most of the time you can live with 1 kidney. So traffickers will take advantage of someone's economic status to persuade them to donate a kidney, and this is another form of human trafficking. This is also a picture of some men who have been trafficked as fishermen. There are so many different ways that people traffic humans. It's so unbelievable. Also logging or mining, the garment making industry. And so what are the numbers? According to the United Nations, the human trafficking generates in the United States $9.5 billion per year. $9.5 billion per year. And this includes 150,000 sex slaves. Now, worldwide, this industry profits with $32 billion per year. And the average age of a child who is victimized into prostitution is 13 to 14 years of age. Now, a pimp, it's estimated by the United States Department of Justice that he can profit $150,000 to $200,000 per child per year. And on an average, a pimp has 4 to 6 girls. So they could easily make over $1 million every year. And there are 161 countries that are affected by human trafficking, and 1.5 of those are children. So what are factors that contribute to the health risk for survivors? Because they do have certain health issues and health risk. This includes being exploited, their economically, physical and sexual violence. A lot of times they may deprive them of food or meals and sleep. I've known of situations where they are forced to work 20 hours a day, and such as with sexual trafficking, sometimes they normally on average have to do that 20 to 48 times in one day on an average, and sometimes they may have to go up to 20 hours, be forced to go up to 20 hours without sleep or food. Therefore, they're put under extreme stress. There's also legal insecurities because they're being forced to do activities that are illegal, and the trafficker will also convince them or persuade them not to trust legal authorities, because basically the trafficker would never want the person that is being trafficked to report the crime. There's also occupational hazards and hazards of traveling. Substance abuse is another problem, and that is one way that traffickers will use to take advantage of someone, because if they aren't addicted to drugs, they will give them drugs, because then they will become addicted, and therefore that also helps the trafficker have more control over that person. Other health risks are discrimination, the LGBT community, having social isolation, if there's any cultural or language barriers, and transportation barriers. That's another issue, because another reason that they are not able to access the care that they need. Most of the time when they come to see a healthcare provider, it's when things are really bad, because they do not have access to being able to travel for health care. Now, these health risks for trafficking survivors include such a long list, I could not possibly include all of them, but they include, because of abuse, contusions or bruises, broken bones or fractures, having joint problems. They do not have any control over their climate. So there's a possibility of them having a heat stroke, hypothermia, frostbite, naturally become exhausted. They can have stomach issues, skin infections. They can have unwanted pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, unsafe abortion complications. They become malnourished. They may lose more weight and have unhealthy weight loss. Psychologically, they can have anxiety, be depressed. They may have unpredictable behavior and be hostile or irritable. They may have suicidal ideations, drug overdoses, and again, this a lot of times can reflect on poor access to care and the control that they lose over their life. So one thing that needs to happen is we need to develop a plan before we actually need to use it to help rescue someone from captivity. Remember that you cannot force this person to report the crime in regards to an adult. And by reporting the crime, you need to keep in mind that his or her family may be at risk to be harmed if they report the crime. So that is one thing that they take into consideration. I will go over some more resources later, a couple more slides. However, there's a really good book. It's called Caring for Trafficked Persons, and it's by the United Nations, and it is a book that was put together by a group of experts from multiple different countries, and it is also a peer-reviewed book. And it's excellent for healthcare providers, emergency room staff, office staff, medical specialists, any people that work in outreach to migrant workers, mental health professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, and it's free. It's about 260 pages. I will have the link in the show notes for this episode on the website. And it is a really good book. So we need to be able to recognize the signs. Would you be able to recognize them? They generally have poor work and living conditions, poor mental health, poor physical health, and they always have lack of control. They do not have the freedom to come and go. They may be under 18, working in the sex industry, working long, unusual hours, have a large amount of debt that they cannot pay off. They may feel fearful, be anxious, depressed. They can have an unusual fear or anxiety of law enforcement. There may be high security at places that they work or their home. And sometimes, unfortunately, off-duty police officers can be hired in places that need high security, and that is a conflict of interest. Because then that creates a position where the victim even more so does not trust law enforcement and the trafficker has instilled a sense of fear in them because of course they do not want to be reported for the criminal activities that they are committing. They can have lack of health care. They may have signs of physical or sexual abuse and being confined or experiencing torture. You'll notice that they don't have any control over financial transactions. They do not have money because the trafficker tries to control everything. A lot of times they do not know how to manage money or have access to banking accounts. They do not have their personal documents such as their driver's license or passports because the trafficker has confiscated them. And they have little or no personal possessions, and sometimes they are not able to tell you exactly where they are or what city they're in because they're always moving, changing locations, and they may not be aware of, what day it is or what the date is because they don't have access to a calendar or things that we normally take for granted. When you interview someone that is a human trafficking survivor, according to the United Nations, there are 10 guiding principles for ethical and safe interviews. First, do no harm, and you want to know your subject and assess what the risks are for your plan that you are going to implement. You need to have already prepared referral information that you can give, and remember, do not make promises that you cannot fulfill. Make sure you have prepared interpreters and co-workers. There needs to be ensured that they have confidentiality and that there is informed consent. Listen and respect each person's assessment of their situation and their safety risk, and you do not want to re-traumatize individuals. Always be prepared for emergency interventions, and the information that you get, put it to good use. There are 3 P's of responding to human trafficking. The first is prevention, then protection, and finally prosecution. Prosecution is very important, and it's also linked to prevention. Many times they also do not want to speak to legal authorities because they may not have legal status in their country. However, in the United States, when someone has been taken advantage of and forced to travel and to do things that was against their will, we do not believe that they should be penalized even further because of that. So they can receive a T visa. However, the stipulation is they have to agree that they will help prosecute the criminal for the human trafficking that they have done to people. There are many different human trafficking resources. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and that number is 1-800-THE-LOST. The National Human Trafficking Resource Center, and research has shown that nowadays most survivors who are rescued more through texting rather than calling because they have to be very discreet. So you can also text help or info to this number, 233-733, which is Be Free. There's also doorstofreedom.com, and we will talk with Sharon Rikard, and this is an organization that helps to rescue human trafficking survivors in the United States. There are international resources. This includes the United Nations Palermo Protocol, the International Police, or Interpol, interpol.net, the International Organization of Migration, humantraffickingsearch.net, freetheslaves.net, and Office of Refugee Resettlement. There are plenty more resources available. So what can you do? You can raise awareness through fundraising. Educate your community and your children on human trafficking. You can have a fundraiser for a run or a walk, a yard sale, a bake sale, or a luncheon. You can have a book club that discusses books on human trafficking. You can get a Twitter account and therefore make tweets about human trafficking. You can blog about human trafficking. Also, contact your state legislatures to ask them how they are actively seeking to combat human trafficking. And you can also donate your time and or your finances. Find an organization that's dedicated to rescuing and assisting survivors with their transition. You can volunteer your time, maybe not always necessarily with human trafficking survivor, the person per se, but many times these organizations need help with fundraising to help manage fundraisers or help manage social media marketing. You can always call and ask how you could help, and also you can make financial contributions. There used to be trafficking of young boys in Dubai or Qatar because they like the camel racing is really big over there. But the camels cannot go very fast with little children on them. I mean, with adults on them. So they prefer to have young boys, sometimes young as 3, 4, and 5, and they were trafficked from other countries for the camel racing. And once it became well known that they were trafficked, they is no longer done. And in this picture, there is a guy who made a robot, and now they use robots for the races. So I just thought that I really liked this picture of the robot for the camel race. So now we'll talk about Doors to Freedom. And Doors to Freedom helps to provide a safe place for survivors of sex trafficking, and they do it completely free of charge. They have multiple different services that they provide, and we'll go over that in the interview. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the Nurse Practitioner Show. We are with Sharon Rikard of Doors to Freedom. And Sharon, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. And I was wondering if you could explain to us exactly what Doors to Freedom offers.
Oh, I'd be happy to. Thank you for having me, Rachel. First of all, Doors to Freedom's mission is we have been established to provide a safe place for survivors of sex trafficking to experience a transformed life. In the United States alone, when I first got started in 2011, there were less than 100 beds for survivors of trafficking. Today, we have an estimated 500. But when you look at the statistics for sex trafficking, you see that the need for aftercare is great. But when we formed Doors to Freedom, we wanted to be able to provide survivors with opportunities and choices. For a survivor, the first choice or the first door of opportunity is her physical freedom. Her battle post-trafficking can leave her feeling very hopeless and feeling like true freedom will never come to her because of the psychological trauma that she's been through. Many of the girls that we have worked with suffer from night terrors, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and even self-mutilation. So we want to provide an opportunity for her to choose to receive help in her healing process. So Doors to Freedom will provide at no charge to the girl a safe place for her to call home. We'll provide services for her such as counseling, continuing education, life skills, vocational training that will help her overcome her traumatic past so that she can become all that she was created to be.
I really like the name Doors to Freedom. So, it's really hard to think about this really being such a predominant problem in our country. Mm-hmm. And a few years ago, I read a book, I don't know if you've heard of it, called The Slave Across the Street. And it was about a 15-year-old girl in Detroit, and I think this happened in the 80s. So that was the first time this, I guess I really thought about it really happening here. So what actually inspired your interest in helping in this manner?
Well, I've had the opportunity to travel to several different countries, and in all the countries I've traveled to, common was sex trafficking. And it was really heartbreaking that no matter where I was in the world, when I came in contact with a young girl that was actually someone else's slave. When I realized that sex trafficking actually happened in the United States, that was in January of 2011, I decided I had to do something. And I really feel like it's why I've been created. It's my purpose now in life to be able to reach out to these young girls to know that there is hope, that there is a better life, and just to be able not just to say that to them, but to offer them a place that they can come to where they can feel safe, where they can call the home their home. So many of them have come from brokenness, have never maybe experienced the things that we consider or take for granted, that we consider normal, such as having a place at a table, a place to be, a place to where they're nurtured, to grow up and to cultivate those giftings that they have, and to give them opportunity and choices maybe that they have never had even prior to being trafficked.
What do you think places these women at risk and being placed in such a vulnerable position in ways that we could educate ourselves and our children and our community to help prevent this problem?
Well, I think as a nation, we can't deny that we have a breakdown of the family. Um, Kids are basically raising themselves, or they're being raised by the television or their social media. So these young girls especially are so vulnerable. And so not only do we have a breakdown of the family, but we have fatherless families. And any little girl desires to have a father who loves her.
Yeah.
It's very important, even I know there's a lot of single moms out there. It's very important for them to know that they are loved. I think talking to your kids about the dangers that are out there. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they have a website that you can go to, and on that website, you can find 20 ways to talk to your children. And I find that a wonderful tool that I hand out is when I go and speak to different, whether it's in a school or in a church or a different organization, just to put those tools in our hand and for we as parents to become educated about what's out there. But homeless, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they have reported that we have like 300,000 youth that are missing. And so to me, that is a huge number of vulnerable kids out there looking for love, looking for provision, just looking for someone that really cares about them. And I think it gives us also opportunity to lift our eyes up and to really become aware of those that are around us and begin to become educated about the lures of trafficking, about questions that we can ask if we come in contact with someone, whether it be in where we get our nails done, or if you, being a nurse, if you see a patient and she comes in and she's pulled by an older gentleman, of just really educating the general public about what to ask a girl, what questions can we ask her so that we can maybe identify her as a victim of trafficking.
When you've had the opportunity to rescue some of these women, what type of experiences have they
Mhm.
mentioned that they have experienced?
Well, the very first girl that we worked with educated us quickly about the abuse that she had endured and others. Common in her life was physical and sexual abuse, and even hearing and seeing girls murdered. So common in her life that when she communicated the details, she communicated with little to no emotion. The abusive behavior has been common for most of them. One young girl that we worked with in Ohio, when she called me, her words to me were, "I'm 22 years old, and for the last 17 years, I've been sexually abused." So that left her very vulnerable to be trafficked. Most of the abuse that they have experienced has been part of their life, literally 24/7. And for some, their abuse began as early as 6 and 7 years old.
Um, Whenever, as healthcare providers, for healthcare providers that are listening to this podcast, how would you say are some identifiable or red flags? Because as you say, what happens is they come in for care, or and they're accompanied with someone, and I know that a lot of times if anybody's in an abusive relationship, the person that's the abuser will be in the room and tries to answer a lot of the questions for them. But are there any other red flags that you can think of? Because it's something that really healthcare providers really aren't taught in school, about how to really work on this and how to identify someone and exactly what a plan would be to help rescue them. Because first of all, they have to want to be, or
Exactly.
to be rescued, and overcome that fear. So, what are some ideas for healthcare providers as red flags and a plan that they could use, or resources?
Well, I definitely think control is probably at the top of the list. If you have a young girl who's accompanied by an older man, is to try to get them separated where you can ask her questions, like, "Are you allowed to go and come as you please? Has your family been threatened? So many of these young girls have communicated to us that they would be allowed to call home, but their trafficker is standing right next to them, threatening that, one, they know where they live, they know they have siblings, they threaten their families, or they threaten, them if they were to say anything. What are their living conditions like? A lot of times these girls are, one instance that we heard about, the girls were actually kept in closets that were built just with plywood and locked in a closet. So there's just, it's almost common sense questions just to ask that maybe don't seem like they're important, or that would give you vital information, but it would. And I think each facility, each hospital, each ER, they need to come up with their own policy and procedure and protocol of what to do, and notifying their local police department. There's also a national hotline that is run by the Polaris Project out of Washington, D.C., and that's the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, which is 1-888-3737-888. And they not only provide or allow you to provide tips of people that you think may be being trafficked, but they also provide resources for whether it be medical, educational, whatever field you're in. They will make it more specific to your line of work.
Now, for people because we have listeners in about 46 different countries, so for people that are in other countries, what resources could they use to either be able to search for help for themselves or to help rescue someone?
Well, there are international organizations that are in the fight against human trafficking. Two that I'm most familiar with, actually the Polaris Project, which is polarisproject.org. You could also contact them. I think they have contacts internationally. The A21 campaign, which is the a21campaign.org. They are working in several different countries over in the United Kingdom, Australia, Europe, and Norway. Then you have organization Project Rescue, which their focus is in India, Nepal, Moldova, Bangladesh, and Spain. So there are organizations out there that are working to end trafficking globally.
So how do you find them and for your Doors to Freedom, and how do people find Doors to find out about you?
Well, most of the girls that we've worked with have found us through the internet. We do have a website, doorstofreedom.com. And when these kids get to a place where they're ready to receive help, it's amazing that they get on that internet and they will Google to try to find a place that they can go to receive help and healing.
And when they come to Doors to Freedom, well, first of all, when they reach out, they normally would be emailing, and they would be getting in contact with you or one of the other staff
Yes,
members.
they would. Most of them have contacted me by email,
And what's your
through
email?
through through our website, or they could contact me directly, which is Sharon at doorstofreedom.com. But when they go to our website, they can go through the contact form, and that's how most of the girls have found us.
Okay. And when they come, what services does Doors to Freedom offer?
Well, currently our home is not functional. However, we are able to offer them individual counseling, training in life skills, continuing education, and some vocational training. So we're limited at this time of what we can offer, but we've even worked with girls so many of them get into detention homes or even jail. So we've been going into the jails and detention centers, offering them what counseling we can offer them. But education is really, really important to these girls. Most of them have had up to a 10th grade formal education. However, when we test them through our assessments, we find that they're really at a 3rd to 4th grade level. So education is really, really important to them.
And you offer, well, you have had a fundraiser, so people are able to donate, and your goal is you're in the process of obtaining a home, so they would have a place to call home.
Yes. Yes, we actually have a lady who's taken her home off the market. It's about 3,400 square feet and it sits on 6 acres. So it would really be perfect for a home for girls where they can have the freedom to walk outside and they don't have a neighbor right next door. We have to be very particular as far as the safety of the girls is, of course, our main concern, but where we establish Doors to Freedom is extremely important for the girls to feel like they are safe, and that we can have, we can expand as we grow. Our goal is to start with minors 12 to 21 because I'm in the state of South Carolina, so we can house girls up to their 21st birthday. However, the older victims or survivors of sex trafficking need as much help as the minors do, because though you have maybe a 16-year-old, when I'm dealing with a 23-year-old, there's not a lot of difference as far as their needs. So we hope to eventually obtain this property and then build a separate building so the older victims will have a place to come to help them get on their feet. A lot of them don't have their GED yet. They have medical needs that need to be addressed, which we will partner with the medical community to meet those needs. And just having that accountability in their life. Normalcy to these kids is very hard for them because their life has been so chaotic. And so really helping them to renew their mind, to inspire hope that they can have a better life, that they are not a commodity, but they were created for a purpose, and there's a wonderful plan for their life, but they don't really have the skills to know, well, what's the next step? And so that's what Doors to Freedom is about, is providing, one, a safe home for them, but also services so that they can know and believe and hope again for their future.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Sharon. And before we conclude, could you just share your contact information and any websites or emails or social media for others to be able to contact you and to donate, so that we could all be able to do something to offer to help these survivors of sexual trafficking?
Absolutely. Of course, our website is simply doorstofreedom.com. Our Twitter account is door, the number 2, freedom. Facebook, you can find us at Doors to Freedom. And if you need to, if there's someone out there maybe listening that wants help, or whether it be volunteer or a girl in need, you can call our phone, which is 843-817-0740. And again, my email is sharon@doorstofreedom.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Sharon. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Nurse Practitioner Show. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast to receive future episodes. Then head on over to our website at www.yourahi.org and connect with us on social media. See you there!